Every 25 years, a new generation of British teenagers find a haven in Manchester's music scene. They get swallowed up by the immense musical history here, but it's not long before each generation leaves its mark. Venues like Band on the Wall and Deaf Institute are and have long been breeding grounds for new bands coming up in Manchester. But with our generation moving in, I want to know what our legacy might look like. Speaking with other Gen Z in the music industry, it's clear that things aren't the same as they used to be.
Manchester as a city is so rooted in music and rooted in the history of music.
There's always been a lot of working class musicians in Manchester's history. Bands like Joy Division kind of kicked off a bit of a post-punk scene in Manchester.
Anything that's a little bit weirder, a little bit more different, that's what's kind of gaining popularity nowadays.
Back in the day it was just more indie and nothing else. That scene was so big.
Genres like post-punk are really on the rise.
I think there's definitely a lot of smaller subgenres kind of coming through.
And that's mainly just to do with the fact that people are kind of bored of defined genres.
There's a lot of dream poppy stuff that I really like.
R&B and hip hop sort of things, I see that a lot more than you used to.
There's new waves coming through of pop.
It's been a new movement altogether, but it also has been a new movement just based in Manchester. I feel like it's a lot more appreciated now.
There's a band called White Flowers, TTSSFU. She's doing really big things now, and that's kind of one of those artists that will go on to kind of make Manchester have another household name.
It's clear that things are already changing for Manchester. The artists that define our city look a little different now, and it's what makes Manchester unique.
I think as a city, Manchester loves music because of the history or the people or a bit of a mix.
Manchester's music historically has kind of set a precedent for other cities and influenced broader trends.
There's so much range in the Manchester music scene.
I feel like it accepts more difference now than it used to.
Compared to Liverpool, a lot of the bands there are just very inspired by Cast, the Lars, the kind of bands that came from before them.
I think we're really lucky that we have a lot of small venues as well. There's so many different spaces to accommodate all levels of artists.
One that I think is rising a lot is Fuel in Wellington. They always put on these showcases of upcoming local bands, student bands, and I think that's where you can find some really exciting stuff.
Young creatives like us are laying the foundations for our future careers. And, with or without knowing it, laying the foundations for the next phase of the music industry in Manchester. And we're doing it the best way we know how, online.
A lot of the ways that we discover the artists is through either they reach out to us on Instagram or we find them on Instagram.
Image is a lot more important.
More people use social media to see certain gigs that are going on and things like that. It really brings more people together.
Vince's Last Summer are doing really well. The first I'd kind of heard about them was on TikTok, but then obviously they're so local. I'm from Bolton, and Tommy, who's in Vince's Last Summer, is from Bolton as well.
Social media is a very useful tool for creatives in Manchester to be able to reach out to people like us. So we often get bands sending in their own music for consideration to review, or letting us know when gigs are on.
A lot of the initial conversations of do you want to perform at our event, or would you be interested in this as an opportunity, has started through Instagram.
It's true that when people connect online, it removes the awkwardness barrier. But it's one thing working with your mates, and sometimes a terrifying other thing to get your foot in the door with a well-established enterprise.
It is definitely an industry that is based on connections and relationships.
Younger person in any industry, but music in general, you have to fight so hard to get your foot in the door, and you have to prove that you are meant to be there.
The promoter SJM, obviously they're huge promoter in Manchester, and we ended up doing a gig under their promotion with a band called Rainmaker a few weeks ago. Yes, we kind of only got that because I was friends with the guitarist of Rainmaker already. I'm not sure we would have if it wasn't for that.
A band called South by Zero, who are in Manchester, they played our Student Union Festival, which we were covering, and through that they got in contact with us again and we managed to send someone to another one of their gigs.
Connections are definitely a big part of it because it puts you in rooms and spaces that you may never have been in otherwise if you didn't know that person.
I find it when I'm at gigs, there'll be like 4 older photographers and they're like, oh yeah, we've only done 1 gig this month, and I'm like, oh, I'm on my 10th.
It can feel like barriers for musicians due to their age can be unfair. Now, more than ever, there's a lot of stigma around our generation's work attitudes.
I think that you'd be able to find just as many hard-working people in this generation as in previous generations.
We don't take shit in a lot of ways.
The perception of younger generations as lazy kind of stems from older generations romanticising the past and having this back in my day kind of view.
There's definitely the younger generation that sit around and don't do anything, but there's also a high majority of people that do work multiple jobs and are trying to get into the industry that they want to be in.
We value our physical and mental well-being a lot more that we wouldn't do 18-hour days for no money.
I think the main barrier the journalists we work with face is finding that balance between being a student and being a journalist.
I am at uni, I work a job, I do photography, I'm trying to spend time with friends, it's a lot to try and keep in line.
I think I'm underestimated quite a lot, and sometimes people maybe don't understand the value that I have to offer. It could be an age thing, and then again that could be because I'm a woman, and it's a very male-dominated scene here in Manchester.
In a cost of living crisis, unpaid work placements and internships are becoming harder and harder to justify for our generation.
It is a shame that it does have to be about how much you're getting paid, but as you develop and start working with better promoters, it's a lot better.
I live in Stoke, so it's anytime I've got a gig in Manchester, which is probably 3-4 times a week sometimes, I'm driving to Manchester and back, so that's fuel. I'm paying for the car park in city centre, which is £15 for 3 hours. And then it's I've also got to pay for if I want food because I'm going to be out late. It's just it's so expensive.
A lot goes into doing a show, practices, travelling there, getting food whilst you're there, travelling back. When you're getting paid per ticket, it can be a bit stressful at times, because you could go do a gig and make a loss on it.
There's a small line between giving people an opportunity and then just taking advantage of their work ethic.
Journalism is very open to young people, but the music industry as a whole isn't as much.
But like generations before us, sometimes you have to adopt a DIY attitude to be the change you want to see.
With Outer City, we've obviously gone out and done that on our own, and I think we've really made a lot of connections and are kind of starting to build a community now.
My first show that I did was for Andrew Cushing, and I outrightly just emailed his manager and was I don't have any experience, but I want to gain some. And he was like, yeah, sure, come along.
We've definitely gone a whole DIY route.
Resources are a lot more accessible. You can really build such a strong profile.
The change it's seen has mainly been in terms of accessibility with the rise of streaming and the rise of social media.
You can really build that really strong online, and you can literally just do that from your bedroom.
It just means that bands in Manchester don't have to have that record label backing that they would have had to have done in the past, which leads to such a more diverse, exciting scene these days.
We did a headline at Band on the Wall, and instead of working with a promoter, we just booked the venue ourselves and kind of put the tickets up for sale on C-Tickets, and we felt like we had more control with it that way. We could pick our own support, we could choose our set times kind of thing, our rider. It was up to us.
I'd be doing enough to be getting recognised so that people then will pick it up. You can't just do one gig a month and expect stuff to happen.
Every generation has its ideas about what it wants Manchester to be.
Musicians have always had to work really hard, no matter when it's been. I think it can be kind of harder now because you've got social media to think about.
For future generations, in general in the music industry in Manchester, there needs to be more support for small independent venues, because without them, bands can't do what they do, which means we can't do what we do. It really is where the basis and the foundation of Manchester's music scene, and in turn Manchester's music journalism, lies.
We have a very ambitious generation, and I think certainly for me there's a lot of change that I want to see.
If I was at a record label and was like high up, I would be giving more opportunities to people who want to get into it. That is missing.
Funding needs to be a lot easier to like access. I think English teachers said it in their Mercury Prize like winning speech. Like they were a band who got like funding from like PRS. I think they just applied for it and won it.
Personally, because I really love like R&B music, jazz music, soul music, I really want to see those genres come through and like really kind of be a bit more mainstream here in Manchester, and just more celebrated in Manchester because there's such a high quality of artists here.
30 years ago, most people would have been surprised to hear that one day, one of the city's most prominent musical exports would be making rap music. So, time will only tell what Gen Z's legacy on the Manchester music scene will be.